It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the films of February 6, 1998. We only got 4 movies to look at today, and a couple of notable ones, including one that is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. It's one of my least favorite movies of all time. We'll delve into that one in just a little bit. But before we do that, let's talk about the biggest new release of the weekend, in end quotes. That is The Replacement Killers, featuring the American film debut of Chow Yun-fat, as well as Mira Sorvino, and the first film directed by Antoine Fuqua. I mean, besides the noticeable fact that this is Chow Yun-fat making his film debut, as well as the feature debut for Antoine Fuqua, and you have an Academy Award-winning actress in Mira Sorvino, it's a pretty generic action film. It takes place in modern-day LA and follows this emotionally disillusioned assassin who's forced to settle a violent vendetta for a ruthless crime boss. And we've seen this done over and over again. There's nothing really all that interesting or all that exciting in this movie. Despite the fact that you have Chow Yun-fat, Mira Sorvino, they're perfectly fine in the movie. And the action sequences aren't terrible. I mean, they're choreographed by John Woo, who also co-produced this film, so they have to be good. But the story really is very, very generic. You kind of can figure out right away what the end result is going to be. And for the first film for Antoine Fuqua, who has gone on to become an incredible director since then, his first couple of movies were not that great. I mean, this was followed by Jamie Foxx and Bait, and it didn't take until a certain film with Denzel Washington and Ethan Hawke that came out 3 years later, where Antoine Fuqua's true talents would come out as a director. But here, it's not that great of a film. It's a very lackluster film, to say the least. It's a film that has some good action sequences overall, some decent acting from the two leads, but other than that, though, it's a been there, done that type of film. It's a film that we can really just move on from really quickly because there's nothing really else to really digest into. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say about this one. That's The Replacement Killer. So let's get to the movie that you really want to hear me talk about, and that is one of the worst, not just one of the worst sequels ever made, one of the worst comedies ever made, one of the worst movies ever made, period. I'm, of course, talking about Blues Brothers 2000. Because clearly this is what we were asking for, a pointless sequel to one of the greatest comedies of all time, almost 20 years after the fact. I mean, this film clearly needed to be made, apparently, but let's talk about it. Elwood is back, once again played by Dan Aykroyd. He's now the lone blues brother because, of course, his brother Jake is now dead. He's finally released from prison, once again enlisted by Sister Mary Stigmata, played by Kathleen Freeman in this film. His latest crusade is to raise funds for a children's hospital, once again hitting the road to reunite the band and win the big prize at the New Orleans Battle of the Bands. Elwood's pursued by cross-country by the cops, led by Cable, who's played by Joe Morton, Curtis's son and Elwood's stepbrother, the Russian Mafia, a militia group, and on his new mission from God, Elwood enlists the help of a young orphan, and a strip club bartender played by John Goodman. I mean, honestly, if you've seen the Nostalgia Critics review of the Blues Brothers 2000, he perfectly summed it up. You've got no plot, you've got no comedy, you don't even have the original Blues Brothers. So why the hell does this even exist? By the way, his review can pretty much sum up why this doesn't need to exist. Just go watch that. But half the stuff they do in this movie is just baffling, and I mean baffling. This does not feel like a Blues Brothers movie whatsoever. I mean, to John Goodman's credit, I'll give him the credit that he had some pretty big shoes to fill as the other Blues Brother, of course, replacing John Belushi. He's a tough act to follow. And in performances with Dan Aykroyd, he works fine, but then again, they've done this for so many years. I mean, they've done this together so many years on stage. So, yeah, it's going to make sense that these two work off each other very well here. But in this movie, there's absolutely no reason for some of the other decisions they decide to do with this. Like, in the 18 years since the original film, they just decided to do nothing with this at all. There's no excuse for this to be as bad as it is. You have Dan Aykroyd returning for this as both the star and the writer. John Landis is back as the director and writer. You have Paul Schaefer as the main composer for the film, and some pretty damn good music. That's the only saving grace of the film. And the decisions they decide to pull are just insane and out of place for a Blues Brothers film. Like, why is there a kid character that we have to follow in this movie? And for that matter, why is this PG-13? It's a sequel to an R-rated comedy that's PG-13, because clearly what kids need to see is the sequel to Blues Brothers. I mean, it's asinine. It's just asinine to think that. Like, this isn't RoboCop, where RoboCop could appeal to kids, even though the original RoboCop was rated R. Rambo doesn't need to appeal, is Rambo 2, because Rambo was also rated R at the beginning and then made PG-13. That had a cartoon series that came out in the 80s after that. Those make sense. This does not. I mean, The ending is so off too. The original ending of has one of the greatest car chases in movie history, police chases ever brought to film, and this one's just ending on a, that's all, folks. Like, without even giving us a real climax. Like, it literally just stops. It stops when you get to when you have this car chase that looks like it's going to be something similar to the original film, and then it's just like, well, that's life, folks. Roll the credits. See you later. It's just like, say what you will about some of the other bad SNL movies that there are. Like, It's Pat is a bad movie, but they at least tried to put effort into that movie, and it didn't work. This, besides the soundtrack, has absolutely nothing to work with. Blues Brothers 2000 doesn't just go down in history as the second worst SNL movie ever made, but it's one of the worst sequels ever made. It's one of the worst comedies ever made. It's one of the worst movies ever made. It's that bad. There's no story. There's no reason to bring these characters back. There's no reason for this to have a kid as the main character. There was no reason for this to be a PG-13 sequel to an R-rated movie. There's no reason for this to exist. It's wasted potential gone down the tubes. John Landis and Dan Aykroyd just completely tarnished their reputations with this movie. There's nothing here. It's awful. Avoid this one like the plague. One of the worst movies ever made. One of the worst pieces of crap ever made. Avoid this movie like the plague. So, let's see if we can get back on a more positive note here with the next movie, Stephen King's. Probably not off to a great start there. Stephen King's The Night Flyer. Spoiler alert, there's no scary things about this movie. I mean, the marketing for this movie just was not that good, and this is a weird releasing schedule. The movie's based off of a 1988 short story by Stephen King. Follows Miguel Ferreira playing this tabloid reporter who, while investigating a series of murders committed in airfields, begins to suspect that the killer may be a vampire. And when you see this vampire, because they don't show it in the trailer, because you know why they don't show it in the trailer? Because it looks absolutely stupid in real life. I'm looking at the DVD cover for it right now on my computer here, and it looks like one of the most hilariously bad things whatsoever. In fact, let me show you what this thing looks like. What the hell is that? Like, I seriously thought it was going to be like a Dracula movie. In fact, the name of the vampire in this movie is Dwight Renfield, which is derived from the American actor Dwight Frye in his role as Renfield in the original 1931 Dracula movie. I thought that's what they were going with this, but nope. It's a completely different vampire altogether, and it's one of the worst-looking vampires I have ever seen, and that is saying a lot. Now, the interesting thing about this releasing schedule is that this was actually originally independently financed by European investors and was almost released by Paramount Pictures, but they wanted the film to be out in time for Halloween 1998. However, the producers decided not to take the offer because they didn't want to break obligations with the European investors that they had. So this film later premiered on HBO in November of 1997 and actually had a worldwide premiere in Italy that May. And then New Line Cinema decided, you know what? We're going to put it in theaters. I mean, we know we just had it on HBO 4 months ago, but clearly we need to put this on the big screen because for no apparent reason why, we're just going to do it because we want to make money off of this. And yeah, this did not make any money whatsoever. This thing crashed and burned at the box office and only made $125,000, which happens when you decide to release this movie on HBO in 1997 and 4 months later decided to put it on the big screen. And they thought that this was going to be the next big thing. They already had a sequel script in the works, and the film didn't make back the $10 million in financing that they had for this, and they never made the sequel, which, you know what, was probably a good thing on that front. I mean, this is a horrible, horrible movie. This is a terrible, terrible film. I mean, the vampire, the makeup alone is laughable. Like, how am I supposed to take this guy seriously whatsoever? He looks like a bad reject of Leatherface and Michael Myers' hat mixed together with a generic vampire. I mean, it looks horrible. And this is when, like, it's amazing that they thought putting Stephen King's name on this. Like, Stephen King will put his name on this, but he doesn't want his name on stuff like The Shining or The Lawnmower Man. You know, movies that are far more memorable than any of this piece of garbage is. It's just, yeah. So I mean, would you really that? Are you really that surprised? Are you really that? I really shouldn't be that surprised he put his name on this, and wouldn't put it on much better films. But I don't know, man. Like this is a terrible, terrible film. The Night Flyer. Let's move on from that one. Let's try to end this on a better note here. Let's talk about Nil by Mouth. A movie that I had no idea that Gary Oldman directed. That's kind of interesting. Raymond and his wife Val and her brother Billy live in this working-class London district. Also in the family is Val and Billy's mother Janet and grandmother Kath. Billy is a drug addict, and Raymond kicks him out of the house, making him live on his own. Raymond is generally rough, even violent, and that leads to problems in the family life. That's basically the basic plot here, but most notably about this movie is that this movie features the word "see you next Tuesday" 82 times. That's the most in any other film in history, and also features 428 uses of the word, the F word, and its derivatives. So that's more than any other film at the time until Summer of Sam in 1999, which happened 2 years later. And it remains the highest ranked with regards to the average number of utterances per minute of running time, with 3.34 minutes, leaving aside Swearing at the Movie, which is more of a concept movie rather than around the very theme, and FUCK, a documentary on the phenomenon. So, yeah, a lot of interesting things you could take from that. I mean, the fact that Gary Oldman directed this movie is very interesting. I don't think he's directed any other movie since then. It's got a good cast here. Ray Winstone, Kathy Burke, Layla Morse. I mean, a really good cast overall in this film. And, I don't know. I mean, I'm very curious to check it out. It's got music by Eric Clapton, too. So, there's got to be something there to it. I've never, like, as you can probably tell, I've never seen the movie, so I don't know if it's any good or not, but it's definitely making me want to see it. I actually am very curious to see if this actually does work as a whole. And it's got some decent reviews to it, so maybe there is something there that I didn't think was there before. So, yeah, this is one I might have to definitely check out one day. So that is Nil by Mouth. So with that said, that's going to wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. When we meet next time, we'll look at President's Day weekend 1998 with 6 movies, including Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore in the first of their many collaborations, The Wedding Singer. Another film based off of a Michael Crichton book, directed by Barry Levinson, Spear. John Goodman starring in an adaptation of The Borrowers. We also have Hurricane Streets, Ayn Rand, A Sense of Life, and also the Bugs Bunny Film Festival. So, 6 movies to look at next time around, and we'll delve into those on the next episode. But until then, thank you very much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode, and also don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this on this channel. So, with that said, I will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching, and until the next time I see you, take care.